So with a lot of new players on offense, the Buckeyes put up 77 against Bowling Green in week one. We bring in Brandon Zimmerman from Buckeye Battle Cry to help us set up the Golden Hurricane coming to Columbus in week two. Brandon, appreciate you coming on for the first time.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mark.
All right, let's talk about this explosive offense out of the gate. JT Barrett did throw a pick. It was ugly. It was a pick six. And later in the game, pretty much a similar situation in which there was underneath coverage. He kind of double hitched and he did the same thing, and it was almost intercepted. So that could have been two in a similar situation. So I guess I'm going quickly to that much of a negative there, Brandon. But otherwise, the offense looked amazing. A lot of new players, a lot of different players. So it's not one or two guys going to carry the load necessarily, especially in the passing game. A lot of different playmakers out there.
Yes, a lot of people did not know what to expect coming into this game just because we had so many new players that we were going to be watching play for this team. We knew about some of the people, Curtis Samuel, Wilson, Barrett, of course. We knew that those three would be able to produce for them. It was just interesting to see all the different other freshmen step up. Mike Weber looked amazing, I thought. I was never a huge fan of Weber coming into this year. I was kind of on I hope Curtis Samuel starts at running back train. But Weber really looked good. I like the way he lowers his shoulder and barrels into the players. He was a few shoestring tackles away from breaking some long ones. So it was just fun to watch. I don't think even the most diehard Buckeye fan could have expected the Buckeyes to come out and put up 77 points against Bowling Green, which is actually a pretty decent team.
Yeah, they have been. They gave Tennessee a decent game last year. They beat Maryland. They were a bowl team that scored a ton of points and played some pretty big teams fairly close last year. I know Urban Meyer commented after the game that he was impressed with Mike Weber, gave him a lot of accolades. He also said, we want him to improve. You mentioned some of the shoestring tackles. He said, we had a guy last year, I can't come up with his name right now, that basically broke most of those tackles. So we're expecting Weber to do the same this year.
Yes, I mean, that would be nice. Right now, it just seems like he's got that Dontre Wilson thing that he had his first 2 years on campus, where it seemed like he was always a shoestring tackle away from breaking a kick return or a punt return. So it'll be nice if Weber can figure that out. And I think he will. I mean, he's a strong kid. He seems like he's got a solid base.
The guy that was really fun to watch and has been for a few years when he gets the opportunity is Curtis Samuel. You mentioned him, and he's a guy that was a traditional running back when he first hit campus, shared carries with Zeke until Elliott took over 2 years ago in 2014. And then he kind of got lost in a sense. They tried to get him the football, tried to figure out ways to get him in space and get him the ball. And he became more of a receiver last year after having all sorts of rushing yardage early in 2014, where he only had like 17 attempts out of the backfield as a running back last year. And now I don't think defenses are going to know where to find him or what he's going to do because he's that versatile.
Yes, I know. I've been screaming from the rooftops on how much I thought Curtis Samuel was going to have a big year this year. It's dating back till February when I was doing the pre-spring outlooks. Curtis Samuel, I just think with him moving last year, as much as it wasn't productive for that team last year, I think in the long run it's going to be huge for the Buckeyes because he was able to get out there and play wide receiver, and just like Meyer said at the end of the game on Saturday, I mean, Curtis Samuel has turned into the first true H-back that he has had here at Ohio State. As much as we love Braxton Miller, he was learning, and he was able to do crazy stuff with the ball in his hands. But as far as a route runner, as a receiver, Braxton had a lot of work to do. Curtis Samuel has the ability to line up in the backfield and break some long runs just like he showed on Saturday. And he's got the ability to beat a defensive back in coverage one-on-one, which he showed numerous times on Saturday.
Yeah, it seems like every time somebody caught a pass outside of Curtis Samuel and maybe Noah Brown, I was scurrying for a roster just because I was thinking, I remember this guy being recruited, but I haven't heard his name in a year or so. And this probably his first pass ever caught at Ohio State. So it was that kind of game. And it just speaks to the recruiting and it speaks to the talent spread across. And we're not going to see a guy catch 75 or 80 passes. We may see 7 or 8 guys catch 15 to 25 passes in this offense.
Yeah, and I mean, you think back, like even what was it, 2013, where Philly Brown led the team with I think 13 catches for the whole season. Now we are sitting here talking about where we could get, easily 8 to 10 guys catching that many passes, just because they rotate so many people through as wide receiver. And I do think once we get more into the Big Ten season, things will slow down, and we're going to have our steady set of wide receivers. But definitely here against Tulsa, you will still see so many new people in there, and you're going to have to be looking to recognize what those numbers are. Because I know when KJ Hill first caught that pass, I know who he is, but I didn't remember which number he was. So
I was right there with you. And you mentioned Tulsa. They come to town following an impressive win over San Jose State, 45-10. We talked about it before we started to record that maybe even more impressive. They scored 38 points in the first half and then let off the throttle. So an impressive showing out of the Golden Hurricane. I don't think anybody expects an upset, but this could be a team that really challenges Ohio State's defense because they throw it all over the lot. They scored 52 in their bowl performance against Virginia Tech just last year.
Yes, I mean, people tend to forget about it, but you think Dane Evans last year for Tulsa had 3 big games. He had Oklahoma, who is a top-tier team. He played against Houston, and he played against Vol Tech, who are all 3 pretty good teams. And all 3 of them, he threw for at least 320 yards. Against the Sooners, he threw for 427 yards and four touchdowns. So, I mean, he's shown that he can put up some big numbers against top competition. And it worries me a little bit because Ohio State does have such a young secondary. And last week, they, for the most part, shut down Bowling Green. But there were a few times where Ronnie Moore was running in space, and I was a little worried where he was a shoestring tackle away from breaking a super long run, or he had one person to beat. If one or two of those would have broke early, like he could have, that game could have turned out different, because you never know how a young team's going to respond to getting punched in the mouth.
Full disclosure here, Brandon, is that you watched the San Jose State Tulsa game. So I think that's great, because I can't imagine too many Buckeye fans or Buckeye supporters watching that game outside of guys that are being paid 6 figures to do it. So, anything else that you saw out of Tulsa?
Well, so Kevin Lucas, I think, is going to provide a lot of pop across the middle for Tulsa, especially with Dante Booker probably not playing. So you're going to have Berger out there, former walk-on. So I'm really concerned about Lucas coming across the middle, seeing what he does in space. You've got Atkinson on the outside, who's a big guy, had a huge year last year, also had big games against OU and Vol Tech. Against Vol Tech, he had 11 catches for 139 yards. It's just, I just worry about that young secondary. I think they're going to buckle down, but if anyone's expecting a type of dominance like there was against Bowling Green, I just don't see it happening. In my prediction earlier this week, I think Tulsa is going to be somewhere in like the 17, 20-point range. But with the rain that is forecasted, who knows? That might be cut down a little bit. The rain could possibly be the Buckeyes' biggest friend here, because I just don't think Tulsa is going to be able to line up and pound the ball against the Buckeyes.
And maybe the only other question we need to ask is what Malik Hooker can do for an encore. So this kid made big plays in the spring game even, and then we see him in week 1 make 2 outstanding interceptions. I don't know what else he can do that's going to be more impressive than what he did in the opener.
It is crazy with him because, ever since he came to a campus, he was kind of a project. He was a basketball player. He wasn't this 5-star kid that everyone was trying to grab. So we always kind of heard about how athletic he was, but we weren't too sure about it. Spring game comes, and he had 2 picks there. He returned 1 for a pick 6. And then his first game in front of 100,000+ people, he had one of the best interceptions that I've seen. He came all the way from the other hash and was able to high point that ball and tip it to himself. He just looks good. I mean, it's going to be fun to watch to see what he does.
And you mentioned the part of it that's impressive from a coaching standpoint, and that what they like to see is that he traveled a great distance to get to that play. And, you know, that interception isn't going to be the result most of the time, but making a play on the ball and knocking it away or preventing the big play by the opposing offense is the thing that is going to count most times in that situation. But the interception was amazing.
It was fun.
All right, very good. Brandon Zimmerman from Buckeye Battle Cry joining us to break down the Buckeyes taking on Tulsa this week. Brandon, we appreciate the time.
All right, thank you for having me.